screen recording, that is. I'm just not projecting it onto the screen at school. So we'll see if it works. So, last class we had our Roman video with our worksheet, but before that we had lecture 1 where we talked about aqueducts, the Roman city, people, military, a little bit about architecture, arches, concrete, vaulting, domes, and we talked a bit about the Colosseum too. But today we're starting with the Pantheon. Pantheon, not to be confused with the Greek Parthenon. The Pantheon is known as the eighth wonder of the ancient world, and it is a true Roman architectural wonder. This temple is dedicated to all of the gods. So, just like Greek people at the time, Romans believed in multiple gods and even the same gods as Greeks, but they just had different names. So, Zeus, for example, was Jupiter, Apollo was Mars, uh, Diana, Venus, or Aphrodite, Venus. Um, they'd have their different like counterparts. Um, so yeah, back to this temple. It was dedicated to all the gods. It was commissioned to be built by the Emperor Hadrian. Um, that's Hadrian right there. He was known as the third of the five good emperors of Roman times. At the time Hadrian was emperor, Rome was at its largest extent geographically. So it took up a lot of Europe, um, the Near East, even crawled into um, Africa. Just really huge empire. Hadrian was very interested in architectural projects, especially with domes. So, um, just to read these bullet points really quick on the slide, world's largest dome for 1,800 years, only Roman temple still in use today. Was a temple for the planetary gods. So, like I said, Mercury was like, who was the messenger god? Hermes. You could go down the list and research that on your own, but, you know, Greek equivalents for Roman. Space gave way to form and content, so not only are we looking on the outside of the structure, we're also focusing on the inside. So the inside was highly decorative too. It says it's perfection, no ending and no beginning. So you see the structure in the round 360 view. It's 142 feet across and 142 feet high. Opening is at 30 feet across, which is a huge opening. Use 4 feet of concrete, and then light creates drama in the darkness of the building. So, speaking about light in the building, if we look at the upper part of the Pantheon, we locate the oculus in the center. So, this right here is the oculus. This opening allowed light to enter in, and it may also have been some kind of symbolism. So, symbolism for the sun, some association there. In the past, like especially in Egypt or the Near East, we see a lot of sun symbolism that could be assumed the same here. So, if we zoom in, yeah, there's the oculus. If we zoom in on the inside, you can see this is a wide angle photo, but you can see a variety of different stones that are used on the interior, which would have been typical in Rome at the time. They gained this stone through trade or mining in new lands that they've conquered. So, because of these different stones, this building really, oops, this building really demonstrates. Let me turn off my notifications. I'm sorry. that was embarrassing. Anyway, I'm sorry. So because of acquiring all these different stones and demonstrating it in the building, it demonstrates the extent of the empire, um, the power it had. Historians discovered stones native to Egypt. So all of these different colored stones would indicate the extent of the Roman Empire. So this is a kind of top view looking at the ceiling. So we have the oculus again, symbolic of the sun. Around it, there are 28 ribs. So ribs meaning these structures that hold up the ceiling. So again, possibly symbolic for the 28 days before each new moon. So, in a month. Um, so certain art historians have tried to read into some of the symbolism of numbers and shapes that are incorporated into the structure, but primarily what we should note is that there is a perfect sphere that can fit within the inside, and that basically circles and squares are the dominant design feature of the structure. So again, we see our circle or sphere, and then within it we have our squares, rectangles, and then even triangles too. Um, so this was an important structure for Hadrian when he was in Rome. He really didn't like being in Rome, but this was a structure he seemed to have he was quite proud of, and it really was an architectural achievement of his. And I also have a video that goes along with this, so please check that out. Moving on to the next slide, we begin to talk about sculpture. So we have four types of Roman sculpture. There's historical relief, portrait busts and statues. We have funerary relief, so sarcophagi or tomb sculpture. And then, of course, we have our copies of Greek works. So going into it, our Roman portraits. One of the main contributions of the Romans artistically is portraiture. So portraiture was very, very important to the Romans. They would display portraits of their ancestors in the atrium of their house. They wanted to emphasize their ancestry through these portraits. So we see this emphasis on individuality, but we also see trends in portraiture. So, the trends in portraiture, how that's characterized. Typically, these portraits, when we think of portraits now, we think of paintings. But Roman portraits were actually sculpted, they were three dimensional, but they were made out of marble or bronze, not colorized. So sometimes the Greeks and Egyptians, they would use highly pigmented plaster or paints to paint their sculptures, but not the Romans. So not colorized, using the natural stone. They were naturalistic, meaning that nothing was abstracted. What you saw in real life is what they carved into stone. There was lots of Greek influence, naturally. And we have this term called verism. So, verism is a sort of hyperrealism in sculpture where the naturally occurring features of the subject are exaggerated, often to the point of absurdity. So, what I mean by that is notice looking at the bust here of an old man, we look at the wrinkles, the folds in the face. I mean, there's just so many of them. He looks like, I don't know, his face needs to be ironed out or something. But there's just so many wrinkles and folds. The bags under the eyes, the wrinkles and the sagging in the neck, the ears very drooping. So we see also what's different from the Greeks that the Romans have kind of began to I guess appreciate is depicting older subjects. So when we look, I mean, we start to see older subjects in Hellenistic, But that's not really what the Greeks are known for. The Greeks were really known for having athletic, young male bodies, but here we see the age on the face. We see the wear and tear over the years. So, um, again, during the Republic period, we see this trend called veristic style. So veristic, to summarize, just means intense or extreme realism. So what we see here is a portrait of an older man. Again, just to reiterate, we can presume that he didn't actually have this many wrinkles, but the trend at the time was to give people this many wrinkles to emphasize people's age. It was to say this person was it was to say that this person had to make lots of hard decisions. This person was experienced, and this person had lots of wisdom. So that's kind of symbolic. The wrinkles are symbolic for that reason. So this was a style during the Republic period because this was the type of man one might see in the Senate or someone who would be elected to an important office or would hold an important role in the Roman Empire. Okay. So also what we see, so that was just talking about the top half of the head, but this now we're talking about the rest of the body, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. We have old heads on younger bodies. Roman Roman portraits are more lifelike than Greek, which is pretty crazy to believe. But there would be sculptures that had a head created that would be later put on a body that was created. So kind of think of this as Photoshop back in Roman times, right? You would have, because it would just be impossible to have this really older looking male and then have this really young looking body. So the reason why they did this was kind of to celebrate the officials, um, kind of show that, yes, they are wise in the face, but the rest of them is strong and young and vital. This was kind of, I don't know, interesting. So, yeah, the general does not appear as he would in life. Sculptors modeled the portrait using Greek athletes and heroes, and that the Roman general might have admired. So that's even taking it a step further. These older Roman generals using the bodies of somebody that they admired. Kind of interesting. Romans believed that the head and the body constituted as a portrait. So, like I said earlier, we think of portraits nowadays as just paintings. Back then, portraits were full body sculptures. Although rules were meant to be broken, Julius Caesar was the first to put his face on a coin. He did shortly before he was assassinated, hence, a new form of portrait was born. So, we have busts, again, going along with old heads on young bodies. Shows aging, hair loss, even sadness. Far different from Greek statuary, here we see three different leaders sculpted only as busts. And you might question why a lot of the time we see sculptures with missing noses. And that's just really simple to explain. It's just because it's an outer extremity, might have been knocked off on accident. Noses are pointy, they stick out. Sometimes, you knock into it, or during excavation, somebody might dig into it, and it's just normal for it to fall off. But again, we have old heads on young bodies. That's how we could identify Roman sculpture from Greek. Moving on to Roman painting. So we really haven't talked about painting up until this point. We did talk about some some frescoes in Aegean, but here in Roman, we really start to see styles being developed. So we have four styles. First one is incrustation or masonry style. Second is architectural style. Third, ornate style. And fourth, intricate style. Starting off with Etruscan style or masonry. Let's just get all these bullet points out. So Etruscan style, it was believed that its origins lay in the Hellenistic period of Greek art in the 3rd century BCE in Alexandria. The first style is characterized by, so not Greek, Egypt. The first style is characterized by colorful patchwork walls of brightly painted faux marble. Each rectangle of painted marble was connected by stucco moldings that added a 3D effect. So, in temples and other official buildings, the Romans used costly imported marbles in a variety of colors to decorate the walls, but ordinary Romans could not afford such expenses, so they decorated their homes with painted imitations of these stones of luxurious yellow, purple, and pink marbles. Painters became so skilled at imitating certain marbles that the large rectangular slabs were rendered on the wall, marbled and veined, just like a real piece of stone. So, really interesting painting style. It was flat, imitated the marble look, came from the Greek walls, still in use today in libraries and boardrooms, even in our homes. So think of this as mm, just painted marble, painted decorative wall. No real imagery, just textural, giving off the sense of wealth without actually spending lots of money. So masonry, with the name, you get the stone, masonry, stone painting. Moving on. The second style, architectural or illustrational. Um, it developed out of the first style and incorporated elements of the first, such as the faux marble blocks along the base of the walls. Um, while the first style embraced the flatness of the wall, the second style attempted to trick the viewer into believing that they were looking through a window by um, painting a view or an illusion image. So it creates an illusion. So basically, to break up a wall, the bottom half of the wall would be the first style. It would be um, like a piece of marble, and then the top half, it'd be like you're looking out a window onto the scene that's happening outside. But really, it's not a scene, it's just a painting. There is a video that goes along with this, so please check that out. And then here we have Dionysian paintings from Pompey's Villa of the Mysteries. They also included the second style because of their illusion aspects. The figures are examples of megalographia, which is a Greek term referring to life-size paintings. The fact that the figures are the same size as the viewers entering the room, as well as the way the painted figures sit in front of the columns dividing the space, are meant to suggest that the action taking place is surrounding the viewer. So it's like the walls are interacting with the viewer or begging the viewer to interact with them. It's like, hey, you're in our space, do what we're doing, you know. It's like hang out with us. Basically, to in simplest terms, these paintings were meant for the viewer to feel like they're in this atmosphere or environment with these painted figures. Here's just another angle. Again, so here's a good example. Here we have the first style, so the painted marble. And then we have the life-size rendering of figures that kind of want to interact with the viewer. This is an entire room of an example of the second style. So bottom is painted, and then top you have like these window views, and then here you have an actual window. Who knows if what's depicted on the walls is actually happening outside. Moving on, third style is our ornate style. Ornate came about in the early 1st century CE and was popular until about 50 CE. The third style embraced the flat surface of the wall through the use of broad monochromatic planes of color such as black or dark red, punctuated by minute, intricate details. Third style was still architectural, but rather than implementing plausible architectural elements that the viewer would see in their everyday world, the third style incorporated fantastic and stylized columns and pediments that could only exist in the imagined space of a painted wall. So the center of the walls often features small vignettes, such as little landscapes that would be painted, which are scenes of the countryside featuring livestock, shepherds, temples, shrines, and rolling hills. The third style, we also see the introduction of Egyptian themes and imagery, including scenes of the Nile, as well as Egyptian deities and motifs. Um, so this really wasn't meant to be an illusion like the previous style, but really just decorative. It divides walls into smaller spaces, painted on panels to be removed and exchanged. So these are interchangeable. They had frames around them, usually painted. Um, so pretty much opposite of the second style, and never could be conceived as an opening to the world because they were so small. It would be just so ridiculous to look out one of these and be like, oh, that's what's happening outside of these walls, because it was just a tiny little image, whereas the previous was an entire block that could be like a window. And then lastly, let's go to our intricate style. Oh, so intricate style became popular in the mid 1st century and is seen in Pompeii until the city's destruction in 79 CE. It can be best described as a combination of the three styles that came before. So we have the faux marble blocks along the base of the walls, as seen in the first style. The frame, we have the frame of the naturalistic architectural scenes from the second, which in turn combined with the large flat planes of color and slender architectural details from the third. The fourth also incorporates central panel pictures, although on a much larger scale than the third style. So instead of these little vignettes, we get larger images, and with much wider range of themes. So sometimes incorporating mythological landscape and still life images. So think of this as still on a wall, but it incorporates a little bit of everything previously spoke on. Also, these are our first beginning records of still life images or still life paintings. Here we see this on a grander scale, kind of all put together. So we see here the fake brick. We see fake marble, these fake moldings. That's from the first style. These large window-like views from the second, tiny vignettes from the third, and these kind of column-like separations from the third also. So it kind of is a combination of all three. And then we have like mythological figures located in some of these borders. Here's another example of the fourth. So we have the first style down here, second style, little vignette, and then the broken up kind of the border, and then all of it just kind of combined. Just think of that as the fourth style. So moving on to, I guess going back to sculpture, we have carved marble sarcophagi for burials. Um, the Roman Empire used these sarcophagi to reflect their religious beliefs. The Romans of the Republican period burnt their dead and buried the ashes in urns, which the family left in tombs. Under the empire, the dead were buried in elaborate coffins of lead, marble, or limestone. Relief scenes on Roman sarcophagi achieved a dramatic three-dimensional narrative power. Um, the luxuriant carving is related to similar narrative and ornate work in fresco paintings, architectural details, and decorative metalwork. The subjects illustrated in these reliefs came from Greek myth and symbolized ideas of death, fame, and the cycle of nature, battles, whether real or mythological, hunting scenes, marriage ceremonies, uh, Dionysiatic figures. Sorry, my pronunciation's Greek's hard. We see cupids, we see sea deities celebrated the rhythm of life, death, and rebirth in the natural world. There's a video that goes along with this. So we see these relief carvings. And what a relief carving is, or what it means, just to remind you, is that it's a carving in the stone itself. So you start with a piece of stone and then you carve within it. It's nothing that you carve outside of the stone and then attach it later. Here we have more examples. So these tombs or sarcophagi, they told stories or narratives. And that's it for Roman. So the quiz opens up tomorrow, Friday, and closes Sunday night. Go over some of these presentations, just to refresh your memory, and take the quiz. It's only about 10 questions. Another thing, next week on Tuesday, we will have a review for test 2, and that will be over Greek and Roman art. So look out for a review video. But it looks like my voiceover survived. We'll see if it'll upload now. Okay.